now that we've finished up with the install via Prism, we're going to go switch over to vCenter and finish up the install over there. So let's go ahead and fire up the vCenter client and connect to our existing vCenter server. Okay, so in this case, we're actually going to create a new cluster for the Nutanix environment. So I'm going to right click on the environment, click on new cluster. Call this cluster 1. We're going to turn on Vsphere HA. We're going to turn on admission control, make sure admission control is enabled. And we're actually going to change that to a percentage of cluster. Now this obviously depends on how many clusters you have, how many hosts you have in the cluster. In this case, I have 3 clusters, or 3 hosts in the cluster, so I'm going to go change this to 1/3 of that, so 33%. So we're going to leave the virtual machine options on default as well. And we're going to leave the VM monitoring options on default as well. Again. Here we can enable EVC mode. And if we enable EVC mode, we want to set it to the least common denominator in the processor family. We want to keep the VM swap file location on default. And click on finish. Once we've created the cluster, we can go ahead and add the host to the vCenter. And click on the host and add host. Here we want to enter the DNS name of the host. As well as the username and password. Then we'll go ahead and click on next. Make sure you assign the licenses. We'll click on next and click on finish. And we'll continue adding the second and third nodes as well too. Okay, so let's go ahead and pick up from this point. Next, we're going to go ahead and click on one of the ESX hosts. And click on the configuration tab. And then we're going to check on the DNS servers. And we want to make sure that all the DNS servers are properly filled out here. Next, we're going to go ahead and configure the NTP servers for ESX. Click on the time configuration, and click on properties. Click on the options tab over to NTP settings, and then make sure that we enter the correct NTP servers for your environment. Next, we're going to click on the storage tab and make sure that our NFS data store that we previously created is actually mounted in each of the ESX hosts. Next, we want to go ahead and configure the VM startup and shutdown procedure. Let's go ahead and click on Virtual Machine Startup Shutdown. And we can see if the start and stop virtual machines with the system is set to disabled or enabled. We want to make sure that's set to enabled. So click on Properties. Click the checkbox that says Allow virtual machines to start and stop with the machine system. Make sure that the controller virtual machine, listed over here with the name CVM at the end, is listed as the first order to start up and start up as enabled. And click OK. So next we want to check the HA and DRS settings for the cluster. So we'll go ahead and right click on the cluster itself and click on Edit Settings. Here we can turn on DRS. Under the HA virtual machine options, we're going to make sure that the controller virtual machines are all set to disable for restart priority. So click on each of that and click disabled for the restart priority. And change the host isolation response for each of the controller virtual machines to powered off. Next we go into Vsphere HA VM monitoring and set VM monitoring, all the VM monitoring for the controller virtual machines to disabled. Next, we're going to click on Data Store Heart Beating. Choose the Select Only for my preferred data stores, and choose the Nutanix NFS data container that we just created. And click OK. Let's not click OK. Let's go into the Vsphere DRS settings and into the virtual machine options, and set all the automation level for all the controller virtual machines to disabled. Next, let's go into power management for DRS. Let's confirm that the power management is set to off. And now we can click on OK. And that completes the Vsphere post-install process for Nutanix.